Hey everybody, Mike McWilliams upstairs to the right music. In this week's episode, I'd like to get a little bit more in depth with one of my guitars. If you remember late last year, I did an episode called the Three Kings Special, where I talked about my three Les Paul classics, the 93, the 96, and the 2018, I believe it was, the one that I just recently traded for 2020 standard. In any case, today I'd like to get a little bit more in depth with the 1993 Les Paul Classic, which is right here. Now, you've seen me with this guitar before. An excellent example of really Gibson at their best. From the 1988 to around 1996 period, that was in the modern era one of the probably best production eras for Gibson guitars. They really had a lot that they wanted to prove. With the advent of Guns N' Roses and Slash really bringing the Les Paul back into the forefront again, they really wanted to come out with some spectacular instruments. In the case of this particular model, it's extremely rare. I don't want to spoil it right now why that is, but this is an extremely rare example of the Les Paul classics from that era. Before I get into why this one is rare in particular, let's take a little look at it and talk about some of the aspects of Gibson during that 1988 to 1996 period, the so-called Goodwood era. In the late 1980s, Gibson's head of research and development, J.T. Riboloff, designed a reissue Les Paul based on the popular and very collectible 1960 Burst model. Now, the key difference between this guitar and other Les Pauls in production at that time was the slim neck profile. In addition, Riboloff added other features to make the instrument faithful to the original, such as a narrow headstock, thin cutaway binding, aged fingerboard inlays, inked on serial number, nickel hardware, vintage style logo, and aged binding on the body and the neck. So looking at what Riboloff was trying to do, he was trying to come out with, I guess, what you call an R0. You know, the R8 is in the custom shop R8 is an approximation of the 1958 Les Paul, the R9 of course the 59, and this, interesting enough, coming out in 1990, preceded all of those. So you can honestly say that in production terms there was an attempt to do the R0 first, and that's exactly what Riboloff achieved here with the Les Paul Classic. Now, one of the other key features is the slim neck profile on this guitar. All of the Gibson Les Pauls that came out during that period, really from the 70s and the 80s, going into the 90s, really had a neck profile that was based on the 58 or the 59. So, if you really wanted to get that slim neck profile, and they were actually trying to appeal also, I think, to the shredders that time, and also one of the big proponents of that brought the Les Paul back into the attention of musicians was Slash, and he himself preferred to have a slim neck profile. So anyway, they came up with the idea of coming out with the Les Paul Classic. With that slim neck profile. Even the Japanese copies during the Love Rocks, for example, those had necks on them that were more like the 58s, what I like to call baseball bats. And in any case, Rybolovs had the idea of designing and creating the original RO concept, our R0 concept. So that's the one key takeaway, is that really the Les Paul Classic from this period, from about 1990 until March of 1993, really was the original custom shop guitar. And we'll talk about why. Now, Tom Murphy, the world famous relic pioneer, was the lead painter back then. Tom Murphy was spraying burst on regular production instruments up until 1994. So as a lead painter, virtually living in the booth and spraying all those guitars, he strove to make them more realistic, and in fact did the first realistic vintage style burst on any Les Paul. So you can look at this 1993 and look at the paint job on it. This is a Tom Murphy painted guitar, which, as you know now, they go at a premium. But to know that that this is work done, you know, this particular paint job was done by the famous relicer who only works now on his own in his own company. At that time, he also helped develop the custom shop. To know that this is one of his masterworks really adds value to this guitar, but it is not the reason why this guitar is in itself a very rare model amongst Les Paul Premium Pluses, or Les Paul Classics. The reason why this guitar is actually a very rare example of the Les Paul Classic Premium Plus is because this particular iteration was only produced from 1993, which is the first year at the Les Paul Classic Premium Plus, to January of 1993 to March of 1993. So what Gibson did was they changed after that period from reading Les Paul model to reading Les Paul Classic. So if you can find one of these produced between January and March of 1993 Les Paul Classic Premium Pluses, you really have a rare model of Les Paul, because again, you've got the thin binding and the cutaway, which actually also they changed as well. They made it a thicker binding, as you can see in the 1996 example here. And again, as I stated, they changed the headstock logo from Les Paul model to Les Paul Classic. When Premium Plus models became available, they were spec'd with book-matched AAA Western big leaf maple tops. These guitars really were the creme de la creme in terms of tops that you could get at that time from a Gibson guitar. That is thus one of the reasons why that period is called the good wood era. So here, as you can see from this top, you've got AAA top, big leaf Western maple, and just a beautiful, beautiful amount of flame on that. Book matched, the whole nine. Now, as you may not know, from the 93 to the 94 period at Gibson is when they were setting up the custom shop and getting ready to release the R9, the 1959 burst duplicate, I guess you could say, copy. From their viewpoint, or reissue is the term that they like to use, that really set the pace for the market even up to today. The only difference between this 1993 Les Paul Classic Premium Plus and that R9 is the fact that this guitar has a short neck tenon in it, whereas the R9 had the long neck tenon in it. Other than that, the same guys who worked on that R9 are the same guys who worked on this Les Paul Classic Premium Plus, the R0. So this is, for all intents and purposes, the first custom shop guitar. Tom Murphy is the painter, the other guys as the luthiers, and the work that they did on this guitar holds up with any R9 from that period. So that's another reason why, really, in all honesty, these are extremely rare, extremely rare model to have. Now, the only real difference between the Les Paul Plus, and the Les Paul Premium Plus was the top, and the fact that the premium designated guitars had no pick guard installed. It was delivered in the case pocket along with the case. The R9 has become the most popular Gibson's historic line. Still, for those who wanted the look of a 59 without the cost, there was the Classic Premium Plus, with a few changed parts for a lot less money. But Gibson solved that problem as well in the mid-1993, March to be exact, when the decal of the headstock on all Classics was changed from Les Paul Model to Les Paul Classic. This finally differentiated the Classic from other Les Paul models in a way which couldn't be easily tampered. Late in 1993, the binding and the cutaway of the Classic was widened, a further distancing from the 1959 reissue. So anyway, I thought that I would go that route with you today, discussing this guitar. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, because that really helps with the algorithms on YouTube. And if you really like what you saw, please take the time to subscribe to the channel. We got lots of great content all the time, and we really talk about some cool stuff like this. So until the next time, you guys, you take care. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.